Yes, the Florida Panthers were off to a great start, a 3-0 series lead. Yes, they have lost the last two. Some people might think it's blasphemous. Some people might think this is madness. But in fact, this is adversity.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, June 21st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here to get their daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Hockey GM. Ever dream of becoming an NHL GM and managing your hockey franchise? Well, now you can with Ultimate Hockey GM. It's completely free, and Locked On listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDONHL in the game store. To download the game, just visit hockeygm.app or look it up in the app stores. Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. So, Florida Panther fans, it is a game day from Edmonton as the Florida Panthers hope to clinch the Stanley Cup on their third try out of four. So it's getting real with the Florida Panthers and running out of chances for them to clinch their first ever Stanley Cup here. And if there is a way to do it with the story of them just being successful on the road, man, would it be a great story for them to finally get it in a very hostile environment. That's going to be Edmonton. But it is a Friday, which means it is a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. Nick, welcome back to the show, my friend. And how are you feeling, by the way?
As what we talk in our chat, we always ask how everybody's feeling or a certain piece of anatomy, how it feels. I'm at about a 4 right now. I think Tuesday was very emotional just because there was expectations and we wanted the team to win at home. But that wasn't the case. So I am now coming into this episode and thinking if it's worth obtaining, it's worth obtaining the hard way. And I hope it doesn't mean that there's going to be a following game after this evening, but we're still in a really good position. The sky's not falling, things can change, and that's why we play the game.
Yeah, and when you think about a memorable Stanley Cup, and if the Florida Panthers do end up being on the winning side, you think about the scratching and clawing and having to earn. As fans, we don't like it that they've lost 2 straight. Obviously, we don't. But just the fact that if you do survive this, it's the ultimate story about learning how to survive different waves in different parts of the year. And just to go back a little bit on all the times that before we get there, Paul Murray's on the off day spoke about how 3-0 is an aberration to begin with. Most series are 3-2. He spoke about that. Matthew Tkachuk, just after the Florida Panthers landed in Edmonton, spoke about how this is the place that they expected to be. And listen, every bad stretch that the Panthers have had this season, there's only been one time throughout the year where a bad stretch has been in a span over a week. There's been really 3 bad stretches in the entire year. December 12th to December 18th, which is funny enough, a Western Canadian trip, which one of those wins was in Edmonton. Crazy to think. January 15th to 19th, 3 straight home losses with no Barkov in that too. That was when he that had that injury against the Anaheim Ducks. And the only one that was a big stretch, the 3-week stretch between March 14th and April 2nd. Remember Ekblad and Tarasenko collided. No Verhaeghe for that last part, and even that part of the stretch was was the part right before the postseason. So it's, for me, I understand. This is a different level. This is a different point in the season. The games mean so much. You're not thinking about 3 games ahead. You're thinking just this one right here. But, and also the difference in those stretches are there's more games condensed in between, which is crazy to think with these gaps and so close to the draft with the amount of transactions that are happening before too. So just goes to show how things can possibly, for momentum, it doesn't necessarily last from game to game, which honestly, looking at this week stretch for the Panthers, this is going to be a span of 6 days in between games 4 and 6. So if there's a stretch that you kind of want to have, weirdly, in the Stanley Cup final, it's when you have these gaps in between games.
Well, that's why Florida is very fortunate, and as you said, an aberration of 3-0 that they can afford right now to, I guess, be where they're at. And, I really only want to consider maybe 2 of those periods of time that you said that they were not playing well. They had tough stretches. Because the third one I really don't consider, because if you look at it, they weren't playing. They wanted to rest. They wanted to be healthy and everything. And they did the right thing because guess what? They still won the division.
Yep.
Boston decided they wanted to play around and not get the first seed, and yet they had a battle with Toronto. But where do you draw the line of, what to really believe in being a bad stretch, or are you just being outplayed? The last 2 games, it's been all Edmonton. Despite that third period in Game 5. But you're not playing to your identity. Mm-hmm. You're taking stupid penalties.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, as much as it hurts me to say this, you're not getting the goaltending you were getting the first 3 games. Let's just be honest. So all that combined, I'm not surprised they've lost the last 2. Now, getting away from Florida might do them some good. They don't have those distractions. They don't have to worry about tickets. They don't have to worry about all the extra stuff that's going on here. Even though we're not a hockey market, for the players, it's still real, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe getting away and playing on the road and having just no expectations, whatever, just go out and play your game. Maybe they simplify and they get back to exactly what they have done all season, which is claw back and win.
Yeah, and it's crazy because you think about how when you look at the final 40, well, maybe 30 for the Panthers right after they went up 4-1, and then the Panthers responded less than 30 seconds later. I mean, you saw how the different stretches of the game, I mean, very similar back to Game 2. And for the Panthers and in the series, sometimes when you look at everything else, things are kind of regressing to the mean. And this is what Jacob of Panther Puri mentioned on Twitter, saying that Edmonton probably deserved to win games 1 and 4, which Panthers won game 1 for them, and then the Panthers deserving to win games 2, 3, and 5, and for them losing game 5 too. So it's the deservo meet on one end. It's the Panthers stole a win, but then in this one, the Edmonton Oilers stole a win. So if you really think about that, as far as like a deserve to win-o-meter, that's in a different order. So everything right here, it's kind of right where it needs to be for this series too. So
what position would you rather be in, though? Would you rather be up 3-2, or would you rather be down 2-3? That's my question.
Yeah.
So we're in a very good spot, and this team needs adversity. The only time that they've really had it in this postseason is probably when Bennett got hurt, and they've had to kind of shuffle their lines a little bit, and then probably their series against Boston. Not taking anything away from, Tampa Bay or the Rangers or anything, but Boston was definitely their toughest test. And now I think they're playing the best player in the world. they're playing a one-man, or basically I'll say a two-man team right now. We have a full team. It's time to show it, and it's time to put it forward so that they can put this to bed, basically.
Oh, do I have a stat for you in segment number 3? Speaking about when you say one-man team, or talk about McDavid and how impactful he truly is. So we're gonna save that. So, but we still have another segment to talk about right before this, and it's all about the practice updates for the Florida Panthers. What's going on? What has been going on in between Game 5 and the practices in between and the travel. So we're gonna discuss that all next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Hockey GM. And hey, Locked On Florida Panther fans, I want to take a moment to bring up one of our partners, the mobile game Ultimate Hockey GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NHL GM and managing your hockey franchise? Do you think you could run the Florida Panthers better than Bill Zito? I highly doubt it. And if you think you can do it better than him, you'd be probably throwing more than just one water bottle there, because he's done a pretty good job in building the Florida Panthers. So that's deserved when you lose a game, but your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. And as a Panthers fan, there's no off season. GMs are constantly making moves at every point of the year to improve their team's chances, and that's why I think you're going to love the game. Ultimate Hockey GM is completely free and playable online. Play on the go as you want, when you want to. Locked On listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchises when using the promo Locked On NHL in the game store, so make sure to check it out. Download the game. Just visit ultimatehockeygm.app or look it up in the App Store. Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. Segment number 2 here on this Friday, June 21st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube with the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. So, Nick, the Florida Panthers they were back at practice on Thursday, right before their flight to Edmonton. So, as expected, with everything that changed in Game 5 after Brandon Montour turned it over to Connor Brown, and then he scored on that shorthanded goal. The Panthers have made the change then and have stuck to it, with Oliver Ekman-Larsson running the power play, and decided to look a little bit back on his power play points from the first 16 games when he ran the power play. But before I get there, left-handed shot versus right-handed shot. So a different shot angle that you're going to get on Stuart Skinner. So it's giving it a different look, which I think is the ultimate thing that you need. If Oliver Ekman-Larsson was right-handed and he had the same skill, I don't know how motivated you are to make that move to begin with. Also, I don't think you put someone like Gus Forsling there when he hasn't played power play minutes all season. And during this 8-year contract, he's eventually going to be power play 1. So let's get that out of the way. You need to go with experience in this case for the Panthers. But looking at his power play points and looking back at some of the highlights from games early in the season, like for him, for Ekman-Larsson, likes to get in the middle of the point and shoot from there and create and through traffic. We saw a lot during the season, and a lot of them with Sam Reinhart in front of the net. 5 points total, one goal, 3 assists. 3 of them are primary points for him too. And even on the goal that he scored, it was with Reinhart in front of the net with a screen too. Mm-hmm. So a little bit of a different dimension that that Palm Racing company, Jamie Compon, who runs the power play for the Panthers, is putting out there for the Edmonton Oilers. And also 3 out of the 5 goals were towards the blocker of the goalies too. Mm-hmm. So this could be good for whenever the Panthers are trying to go after that after Stuart Skinner, because if Ekman-Larsson is shooting from the left side, where's Stuart Skinner's blocker? On his left too. So instead of Montour shooting far side, it's a lower percentage shot and he has more time to react. So that's why I think this could be a good move for the Panthers.
So one thing I will say about bringing Ekman-Larsson back to QB the power play, one, yes, you do have the experience. Number two, the stat that you just gave about the goal and the 3 assists and them being primary on Reinhart. When's the last time we scored a power play goal that had a tip? It's all been off the rush, or it's been, like the bumper play, like what Reinhart did in the New York series. It's just they have to make it simple. Everybody knows the bumper play is going to be there, but if you change the dimension a little bit and you have a defenseman that can put the puck through people and actually get it towards the net, you're going to have so many opportunities. And, as you said, if he puts it towards the blocker side, is he going to be able to cover up, or are you going to have Tkachuk there? You're going to have Reinhart there. You have Barkov, obviously, that's going to be swinging between both ends of the ice there. That could possibly just be there for support in case, there happens to be a rebound that comes out. But I think this move was more or less made not because Montour gave up the puck. It's just that the power play has been so stagnant and
Not a lot of movement.
Not a lot of movement at all. Not like it was earlier in the playoffs. So we'll see what happens. I'm hopeful of it. Hopefully Reinhart, makes a couple plays, but I would not be surprised if Tkachuk goes back into his realm where he's going to be in the blue paint or around the blue paint and going to make them pay.
Yeah, and the only goal that the only power play goal that the Panthers have scored in this series was power play 2 and off the like a quick transition 2 for them. Yep. So that's and OEL got a secondary assist on that one too. Fun, crazy to think. But it's also just about really. I'm just looking for the Panthers to be even in on special teams. It doesn't need to be equal on their PK scoring and then Panthers countering with a power play goal of their own. It doesn't need to be Panthers scoring on a power play and then them scoring on a power play. The net power play percentage, excuse me, let me get that term correct. I just need the net part to be equal for them. And if you are, and for Montour, the mistake that he made when he grabbed that puck at the point was not taking a few strides. He was too quick to try to get that point-to-point pass to Alexander Barkov there too. So with more time on the power play, because Montour with the Panthers, before Maurice, he wasn't getting power play time. I get it. Now you have more than 100 games under your belt too. But when it's the first goal of the game too, on those shorties, it's just so backbreaking, and psychologically it just affects you so much. If you can start the game by just even if you get nothing on the power play, I don't want to say that it's at least it's better than giving up a shorty. I don't want to think that way too. But at the same time, where crap has hit the fan these last 2 games, I can't help but think that neither.
No, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, you give up 2 shorties to start the game. Like something's got to change, right?
Yeah.
You wish you can get more shots off, or as you said, you wish that Montour could have skated it out a little bit more. I was thinking, if that pass isn't there, you see that it's going to be defended, just dump it back down. That's always the safest play, is get it back down deep. Even if you don't win a board battle, at least you're taking away a chance. So you have that. And as far as special teams goes, Florida just needs to win one game. They just need to go all out one game and make sure that Edmonton doesn't get anything. Stack up the neutral zone, stop them up at the blue line. And I hate to say this because I'm not saying this to condone harm or anything like that, but if McDavid's going to try and shift around like that and try to go through you on the blue line, it's okay to put a shoulder in him. All right. Mm-hmm. He needs to understand that you can't just drive through people, and that while you are the greatest player in the world, which he definitely is, there's always a cost to the way that you play. And the last 2 games, it just seems like he was slicing the Panthers up like Swiss cheese. And I'll talk about another part of the defense, or at least the special teams, that we'll get into segment 3 about. But you need to at least mitigate, or at least make sure that he doesn't get the chances that he does. And they did that much of the first 3 games. The last 2, he's been flying everywhere, and he's had every chance possible.
Mm-hmm. And for McDavid, here's actually, I'll save that for segment 3. But yeah, you got to keep your eyes on him. And for Mikkola and Kulikov there, not their best moments, using so much stick and not enough body there, where it's not going to be enough trying to just reach for him too.
And the gaps were too wide.
Yeah, way too wide and behind the play once Kulikov was trying to get a stick on him. But yeah, so but what a redemption story too that would be for Oliver Ekman-Larsson, going back to him, if traded after being a 6th overall pick in the 2009 draft, same draft as Kulikov, by the way, bought out, part of the biggest buyout in NHL history, to hopefully Stanley Cup champion. That's great redemption story for him. But speaking of redemption stories, we have possibly another redemption story, as someone was inserted into the 4th line at practice for the Florida Panthers. And we're going to talk more about Connor McDavid and his on-ice impact for the Edmonton Oilers. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, you're guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make sure to make your car the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Segment number 3 here on this Friday, June 21st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Friday. So another move that the Florida Panthers have made here is putting Nick Cousins back on the 4th line for the Panthers. So the 4th line is going to be looking like Lomberg, Stenlin, and Cousins. And love Kyle Okposo. Unfortunately, he looks like he's not going to score for the Florida Panthers at all. Going to finish with no goals in his Florida Panthers career. But this is also, it feels like this is also a no turning back kind of deal for the Panthers. They're going to go with this for the rest of the series. And Paul Maurice also spoke about how they aren't going to wobble. You make changes every game here and there, but it's not drastic changes. We're not going to see an Anthony Stolar start. We're not going to see Montour scratched. So I know people were calling for Tarasenko to get scratched too in a few last round too. So that's another thing for that I've seen online too, when he wasn't getting going. So this is the crew that the Panthers are going to roll with. So with Cousins, for the aggressive forechecking style that the Panthers have, and these two identity players. I mean, we've seen Lomberg score a big goal in Game 4 against Carolina. Nick Cousins scored a big one in against the Maple Leafs last year. This is like Operation Ground and Pound for the Panthers here. But I do also acknowledge that these two guys are prone to taking penalties too. So that's also what I saw it, and I was just like, okay, this is what you're rolling with. So, but at the same time, this is about trying to set a tone early too for the Panthers in this one, when you're seeing all the matchups. And here's the McDavid stat that I have for you.
And we've just been teasing everybody.
Do you know how many players on the Panthers have a goals for percentage under 50% when McDavid's off the ice?
We're talking about the whole roster?
The whole roster. Skaters,
Okay.
obviously.
How many of them? I'll say 15.
Of the 18? Of 18?
Yeah.
Well, more than 18 because of the flip-flopping.
Yeah.
But zero. Zero players have a goals for of under 50% when McDavid's off the ice. So that's also how dominant McDavid has been when he's been on it. So Barkov is even when with McDavid on. McDavid has averaged 4 points in the last 2 games. So when I'm thinking of more of things that regress back to the mean, when think about how we mentioned in segment number 1 with games that maybe Edmonton deserved to win or Florida deserved to win. What if this is the same thing with things regressing to the mean as far as what the Panthers are going to do to stop him in the first place? And this stat is from Natural Stat Trick that I saw. I'm just like amazed of that too, of that stat when I saw it. I'm like, holy crap. But that is the key. And also, let's not forget that Draisaitl hasn't been himself this series. So it doesn't mean that you ignore him, obviously. The second line has been the line that McDavid has just pounded the most. That's really been. But thankfully with those switches and Evan Rodriguez just picking
having a good series.
4 goals, 7-0. He's +7 at 5-on-5. And and that's why I mentioned earlier in this segment of the 2 guys and Pro taking penalties. This is where it's a little scary if you do get away from 5-on-5 in Game 6.
For sure. And I have to say I'm kind of embarrassed when I said 15 because I think I misunderstood the question. So when he's not on the ice, what is the goals for over 50%?
How many players have over under?
Okay. All right. Yeah, I would have definitely said something closer to 0, but 15. Whew, sorry, guys. My opinions obviously don't matter anymore. But I think the insertion of Cousins tells you 2 things. One, the last 2 games have started off very tragically for the Panthers. Unfortunately, they've given up a shorthanded goal to start the game, and you could just tell the energy was just sucked out of them. Not that they gave up, but you can just tell they were not right. They didn't play well the rest of the game most of the time. Taking stupid penalties. They just weren't playing their style of game. And now you have Cousins that comes in that, to me, is like kind of like an Energizer Bunny, just like Lomberg. But he's somebody that can also chase down the puck and basically heckle the defense on Edmonton. So not saying that, the other guys that were in like Okposo or Lorentz couldn't, but I think Cousins with experience has just a little bit more probably to offer at this time. And I've said it this year, Cousins will make his mark on these playoffs. Now, maybe this is the time. Maybe it's not this game. Who knows? But I think the move is just made in part because the Panthers need an energy boost. He's one of those guys that everybody loves. I mean, look at the T-shirt that they made, the collage of him.
Back in round 1.
I think that could be a rallying point, to be honest. Like, Nick's back in the lineup. Let's go. Like, we love this guy. Let's follow his leader. Follow his energy. We got this. So I think this almost might be genius on the side of Maurice.
I hope Kevin BX is watching. Oh, actually, Kevin BX will be watching. So hopefully, so that's the first person I would think of if he does score in Game 6 for the Panthers. But I also think about it from just how matchup wise with Lorentz and Okposo, bigger body type of guys too, who are going to fight more of the board battles. But when you think of, we acknowledge 2 contrasting styles of play, but you need somewhat of a way to counter that. And both Lomberg and Cousins are a little bit more of speedsters. I know Kevin Stenlund's not really much of one, but if you can get a face-off win, especially if your own zone, and if Kevin Stenlund does freaking ice the puck too, that's another thing. If you can just chip it up and at least get a little speed, or even if you have a lead, not necessarily take some time off, because if you're taking some time off while you have a lead, you're kind of playing not to lose. That's not what I want the Panthers to do.
No.
But if you're still creating something, getting them tired, getting it under duress, or at least getting in Stuart Skinner's kitchen, then I think that speed factor could really help whenever it's like, even if it's a chip in the neutral zone and you're trying to do a swim dodge around too. That's another thing. So I think that's really helpful.
Like, who's going to get to the puck first? Is it going to be Lorentz or Lomberg or Cousins? You need that speed to disrupt the defense because, one, I think one of the things that's helped Edmonton this series is that Skinner's able to come out of his net and stop it for them and give them full control. So the dump and chase hasn't really worked. Now you have two guys that are going to come at you at both wings and probably either win the race or it's going to be very close, and they're not going to let the guy go easily. So you're going to have a tough battle. The Panthers are looking for possession and winning battles, and I think that right there is probably the recipe. Don't allow McDavid to get up the ice with the puck. Just hammer the defenseman, and make sure that the other lines don't really get going either. Because listen, first two games was mostly, McDavid wasn't doing anything, Draisaitl wasn't doing anything. Hell, even their depth wasn't doing anything. So if you can at least neutralize exactly their breakouts and also going back to retrieve the puck, you're going to be in good you're going to be in good stature.
Yeah, and also with Ryan Lomberg always being the last guy out of the zone, last one on the forecheck when they're trying to break out too while they're getting their change. That's another thing of something different that's brought to the ice for the Panthers. I know he's already been back in one game already, so I want to see how it's like with two guys on it who can get a quick transition, because no goals for Stenlund, no goals for Lomberg, no goals for Cousins. Obviously, two guys who were recently inserted too, but same thing with Okposo and Lorentz weren't getting it on it neither. So you need something, and that's why I also mentioned those McDavid minutes off the ice too, of nobody being under 50. There needs to be something there, and I know McDavid's likely going to be on the ice too, matching up against those fourth line guys too, for the Panthers, with them having last change. But that's really going to be the key for the Panthers. That we're going to see McDavid probably matched up against that line and also the second line for the Panthers, because he's just been uberly successful against them during this series. So what can you do about getting in also pucks in deep and smooth changes, getting your top line back on the ice too, to get Barkov with McDavid once again, because like I said, they're even 1-1 with Barkov and McDavid on the ice. So big one tonight. Game 6, 8 p.m. on ABC, and hopefully Nick, third time's a charm for these Panthers. Hopefully,
I hope so. So I know we're about to wrap up here, but I'll leave you with three things the Panthers need to do to win. 1, score first.
Yes,
it's a huge momentum push during that game. It'll shut the crowd up. Secondly, let me give you this stat. Since Game 3, Stuart Skinner has a save percentage of .943, goals against at 1.71. Sergei Bobrovsky, save percentage of .756, goals against at 6.43. Sergei Bobrovsky needs to have a stellar game. I'm not asking for a shutout. I'm not asking for one goal, whatever. Sergei just needs to be Sergei, and the Panthers will be fine.
Yep.
The third thing, Carter Verhaeghe needs to score.
Yep.
He is the guy that clinches everything for this Panthers. He has the most he's your clutch guy. He needs to be there, and he needs to be the one that ends this, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So those are my 3 tips to win.
Yep. Him, and I'll add Reinhart to that list too, because we're gonna see Barkov and breaking up plays, but you need to get those scores around him, and thankfully they're reunited in order to create hopefully a spark for the Panthers. And I predicted Panthers in 6, so hopefully tonight will be that night, June 21st, 2024. June 20th is already a historic day in South Florida sports history with the 2006 Heat and the 2013 Heat. Let's make June 21st another memorable day in South Florida sports history. But Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Tell everybody where they can find you online, my friend.
Armando, it's been a pleasure doing the playoffs in this whole season with you. Sad to say this will probably be our last episode before a team is crowned champion, but look forward to the off season with you. But everybody else who's listening and watching, you guys can follow me at Prudentious0 on Twitter. And hey, I look forward to speaking to you next week. And I don't know, do we keep it if we win? I mean, or if we lose, is it coming off? That's my question.
It's coming off no matter what. I hate it.
Yeah, I'm starting to get there myself, but you never know.
Yeah, it'll be off. But thank you so much, my friend, and I will see you next time.
I'll see you next time.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Nich Fairbanks, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, with your team every day.